Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton here with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper.
Matt, top of the evening to you.
Well, you're all Irish and stuff or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I was thinking, I've known you for almost a year now.
Yeah, it
And
has been almost a year, yeah.
I kind of like you in spite of yourself.
Oh.
And, I was thinking of what's best for you, because that's all I care about, really.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Oh, very
And
nice. Thank you.
the one thing you don't have, I guess maybe because I was watching The Wizard of Oz with the kids,
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed the one thing they didn't have was one of them didn't have a title. And you don't have a title, Matt.
I don't.
You don't have a title like doctor or professor.
That's true. That's
So
true. I tried to buy one online once, but it turns
No.
out that doesn't count.
what I'm suggesting is that you run for state representative.
Really?
If you run for state representative, once you're sworn in, you become the Honorable Matt Connerton.
Wow. I like the sound of that.
Forever.
Forever?
Forever.
So even if I don't stick around, I
Even
still.
if you don't show up ever again after
Wow.
you're sworn in,
Wow.
you are the honor. I mean, you might do dishonorable things,
Right. Right.
right? But you would still technically. It's like doctor. A doctor could be Oh, I don't know. I was in judiciary this week, and there was one bill, and they were talking. What was it? This is a little off subject. A bill that would require or allow a doctor to say to their patient that they're sorry and why. Like, in other words, if a doctor did something wrong, they would be allowed to tell the patient, yes, I screwed up, I'm very sorry, it's horrible, and yet that apology can't be used in court against them.
Interesting.
The idea is so that the doctor would have the privilege to actually be honest, as opposed to the lawyers who might run the hospital tell them you can't be honest.
Right.
Because if you're honest, then we're liable.
Right, yeah, because legally, I mean, not just with, it's kind of like if you get into a car accident, even if it's your fault, you never say,
You don't say, well, that was really stupid of me.
right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Interesting.
Yes. But anyway, during the testimony, I'm supposed to be, I guess honorable.
Yes.
And then somebody testifying says, and they said, well, there was this one case where the doctor put in the wrong liver, and I just started breaking up.
The wrong liver?
I don't know why that caught picking struck me, but
That is funny, because now I'm just imagining,
I was just imagining like a chicken liver.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Oh, we have a guest.
I was telling him how lack of decorum I have in the legislature.
Oh,
I'm kind of a professional at that.
it's infamous.
Yes, infamous.
Gary.
Kevin, the Honorable Kevin Smith.
Are we live here?
We're live.
We are live.
We're live.
Okay.
Yeah, I was telling him we have a bill in the Judiciary Committee today, Tuesday,
Yes.
and it was a bill to allow a doctor to apologize to a patient without the legal liability. So in other words, if the doctor said, yes, I screwed up, I shouldn't have cut I meant to amputate your right leg, but I screwed up, I had been drinking the night before. But the apology can't be, the idea was so that the doctor could actually be honest without concern about liability. That was the bill. But anyways, during the testimony, somebody said that, like, there was one doctor that put in the wrong liver, and that just killed me. I'm thinking of the doctor sitting there and grabbing like a chicken liver out of the refrigerator.
Yeah, yeah. The doctor has like a tray of livers to choose from,
Yes.
and then one of them,
Eeny, meeny,
they're not
miny.
clearly labeled,
No.
and,
It's like on Young Frankenstein.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the brain that was, what was his, what was it?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Come on.
I haven't seen it in so long.
It was Abby Normal.
Yes, yes, yes.
Abby
Yeah.
somebody. Abby Normal.
I'm not sure, Gary, if I was supposed to have my right arm taken off and he took off my left arm and said it was because he had been drinking the night before. But he apologized. I'm not sure that would make me feel much better.
No,
about
right.
it.
You're
right.
Irish, right?
I am.
See? Okay, so there'd be a certain sympathy.
maybe a certain sympathy.
Certain,
I don't
not
know how
necess-
much.
I don't know. Okay, so anyway, so today we had some interesting stuff. We had House Bill. This is how good my eyes are. We had House Bill 659. House Bill 659. Basically, it was a woman's right to know. We've had shows on that. We had from New Hampshire pro-life came and talked about this. I think we've actually had a couple of shows on that, and it was gutted today. But one of the amusing parts was the Democrats had an amendment, and I'll let you read like the first line. I can't say that without laughing. This is the amendments. The woman said that it was the right to know bill, which basically is a legislation that says if a young woman or a girl goes in for an abortion, the provider is required to give her certain information and wait 24 hours before the abortion so that she can make a legitimate decision. One of the Democratic legislators believed that was too sexist and offered this amendment.
Okay, so this, you want me to start at the top here?
Just a little bit. You don't have to do the whole thing. It'll get kind of tedious, but.
Okay. Well, it's I'll start here. Amend the title of the bill by replacing it with the following: an act relative to the Woman's Right to Know Act regarding abortion information, and establishing the Men's Right to Know Act regarding erectile dysfunction treatments. Amend the bill by inserting after Section 1 the following, and renumbering the original Section 2 to read as 3. New chapter, Men's Right to Know Act regarding erectile dysfunction treatments. So,
I'm glad to see there's a lot of important business that's getting done in the House
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah, I know. You probably missed that.
Immensely, Gary.
are there a lot of bills that would make one chuckle like this, or?
That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. That wasn't allowed in because it was not a non-germane, actually, amendment, because the original bill was on the right to know of abortion, so
Yes.
this doesn't qualify. So it's a non-germane amendment and wasn't allowed to be discussed. But it was.
Well, I think it has value.
But anyway, so that was the funny part of today. Let's see, what else did we do today? What else did we? You were there. You were up slumming today.
Do you have any funny stories from today?
I have clearly am not having as much fun as the New Hampshire House is having these days.
Let's see.
You had the gambling bill.
Thank you. We had the
Sure.
gambling bill, and that actually went really good. As Matt knows, I'm against gambling. The bill particularly was unconstitutional, absolutely unconstitutional, because it basically gave a $50 million license to 4 groups or 4 people to come into the state to open up gambling, which is against Article 10 of the New Hampshire Constitution, which says that the government effectively can't be used to help any one group or any person. So in other words, I can't use my position as a legislator to forward a bill that would help Matt's entertainment company, send him that, because I'm helping one group of person, and that's basically in effect what that the gambling bill would have done. So that was defeated today. So that was good.
Is it because it was for those 4 specific people that
Yeah,
would have.
I thought there was and maybe I'm wrong about this, Gary, but I thought there was a bidding process to it. Weren't
Correct,
the
but-
licenses going to go out to
Correct, but the bidding process still was a $50 million price tag. No, not bidding, but it was. I think people had to say they'd pay the $50 million. It might be bidding, but I don't believe so.
Huh.
But the fact of the matter is, $50 million to come up to start your own business is not something. Well, Matt probably has $50 million.
Yeah, well, in an account in the Cayman Islands.
In the Cayman Islands, but I don't have $50 million, so therefore I voted against it. This morning there's a lot of bloodletting today. Last week we had House Bill 437, which was the gay marriage bill. Mm-hmm. And the gay marriage bill is a Republican platform legislation, and it's something Matt knows that's very important to me.
Yes.
Not in the fact that I want to eliminate gay marriage, but only in the fact that I think that the traditional marriage is the standard with which the state should try to push people towards. not continue to dilute that. And so what happened was Representative David Bates and Representative Groen had a bill, and they had an amendment, and the amendment made the bill better, or part of it did, I would say, and they were just cut to pieces on the House floor last week. The leadership of the House did not take a position on the bill. What typically happens, if leadership takes a position, they say to their people, look, I need your support for this. That's 30 or 40 votes right there.
Yeah.
Leadership gets on the House floor, says, I need you to support this. That's another 30 or 40 votes. And it also helps organize the debate so that it doesn't become a Donnybrook. And no Irish offense, right? And so,
None taken.
but that's what basically happened. Leadership. I specifically called Representative Bentoncourt, who is a majority leader, during caucus this morning. I said that he absolutely failed to lead. He was elected to lead the legislature, the House Republican caucus. That's his job. He didn't do it. The bill died, and it's his responsibility. And so there was, it was funny because afterwards he comes up to me and says, you know, I thought we were friends. Yeah, I'm your friend, but that's got nothing to do with this. This isn't about how much I love you.
Right.
It's the fact that you know.
Actually, when he was on the show, you said you hated him. You kind of mumbled it. Oh, sorry.
And I still like him, but that was his responsibility. And the repeal of gay marriage was dead because leadership didn't support it. And
What was his reason for not supporting it?
he didn't agree with it to begin with.
Yeah.
And he didn't agree with it last year. And he put it off to this year, saying that we wanted to discuss this in the second year, and then there was no support for it.
Okay.
Whether that's for whatever reason, it's irrelevant, because if you take the position of majority leader, you're the majority leader. You're not the leader of your own agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense,
You
yeah.
have to kind of put your own agenda on hold while you advocate for the party.
Right.
And so he did not do that, and it was really bad. There was a lot of angry people there today.
Really?
Oh yeah, I saw. I won't give names, but there was. You probably can see it on TV. It's public knowledge. But one of the representatives that killed gay marriage went up during one of the debates and said, "Well, I'd like to reconsider this because some of us in my section were confused as to what was going on." And one of the Representative Groen went up, says, the fact that I'm sitting in back of the representative that's confused and looking down at the buttons, I know that section there was only one person confused, and it was her. It was like brutal.
Wow.
It was like, wow, because he's
Awkward.
he's a wicked nice guy.
Really? Yeah.
I never seen him go for somebody's throat like that.
Wow.
It's getting pretty ugly.
Well, I'm glad to hear you all are just getting along so well.
Oh, it's
there in
getting
Concord.
bad. Last week, House Bill 437 was quite entertaining for the Democrats. They didn't even debate it. They didn't have to because Republicans were cutting each other up, and it's a function of a lack of leadership, is why that happened. If you have leadership in the House, you're not hacking up Republicans on the House floor, and that's
Right.
And Bill O'Brien said he never doesn't want that happening, but he let it happen. But anyway, so that's what happening on your legislature. I'm still earning my $100 a year, I think,
Yes, and then some.
and then some.
But you got to chuckle
And
now and then
food.
too.
And food.
And lasagna. Yes.
So anyway, we
Who's
have.
feeding you? Who fed you
Actually,
today?
today I went and fed. I just needed some time away. I was so been so angry since that bill last week.
Really?
I went over to the Chinese restaurant. Actually paid for my own food.
You got lasagna at the Chinese restaurant,
No,
Gary,
I didn't get
huh?
lasagna. I got
Okay.
Chinese food.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, so
So,
okay. So let me get this straight. You were a legislator back in the 90s.
I was.
For 2 terms,
just one term?
and you smartened up that quick.
I did.
Did
I
ever-
did.
Did we actually introduce him? I don't remember you saying his
Yeah,
name.
the Honorable Kevin Smith.
Oh, you did. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I missed it. Okay.
Kevin's running for governor, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I just wasn't sure we covered all that. I might have been distracted by the wrong liver and all that.
Yeah,
so.
the wrong liver.
Okay. I apologize. Well, if you're joining us late, That's who our guest is.
Okay, so you were I just trying to I want to make sure I
Yeah.
cover your
Sure.
qualification. You're running for governor,
I am.
and if you get elected, I'm presuming you'll have food.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, that was a good answer.
In general, Gary, or or you mean for the legislators?
No, I don't care about them. I'm talking about me.
Okay.
It's
You know.
It's Gary's stomach's world. We all just live in it.
Like Twinkies in your office, something.
I will
Twinkies.
have Gary. I'll have a special stash right under my desk. Anytime you come in, I'll pull out the hostess
The Hostess
cupcakes or
cupcakes and stuff?
Twinkies just
That's
for
awesome.
you.
That is
Wow.
awesome.
I know, right?
Yeah.
You're
You know how to
right.
work
Hey.
it. You're good at this.
That's all it takes.
That's it. That's it.
Wow.
So yeah, I did. I served in the legislature for one term, and I've worked for one of our former U.S. senators, Bob Smith. No relation.
He was wonderful.
Bob's a good guy.
He was one. That's what we were talking about. Republicans, the party versus the actual people in the party. And I said that there is that perception that the party itself is somehow evil, and sometimes it really is. And that was the example I gave. Is they took somebody who was an absolute conservative and cut him off at the knees because they wanted Sununu's son in.
And we have our call, our first call of the day.
Wow.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Norm. I'd like to ask the Honorable, what's his name?
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith?
What his platform is and why he's running for governor and what makes him think he's the best candidate for the state of wonderful state of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Well, why don't you just host the show yourself, you jerk? He's a guy on before.
I hope you know him.
Yeah,
I hope
yeah.
that's not how you treat all your guests.
That would be funny.
Yeah.
Well, Norm, I don't think you're a jerk, Norm. I'll tell you that, and I
You
appreciate.
don't know him like we do.
Okay, I appreciate the question, though. So I'll talk a little bit about my platform. As I've said on the stump many times, I want to see New Hampshire be the most economically competitive state in the country over the next decade. And we really need a real plan for creating jobs here, not just rhetoric and platitudes, but a real plan for creating jobs, economic development. Bringing our electric rates down. You know, we pay some of the highest electric rates in the country here in New Hampshire. We haven't had a long-term energy plan for some time. Making healthcare more affordable and more efficient, and then modernizing state government, making state government more efficient and more accountable by doing what I did when I worked for the state, which was implementing a system of metrics across the department to measure the efficacy of state funding. I was going through a little bit of my background, so I've worked in the executive branch. I worked for Governor Benson. I was the deputy director of our state's juvenile justice agency for 2 years, though I worked at the agency for 4 years.
Juvenile justice. I talked to who's the director of prisons and stuff.
Commissioner Wren?
Yes. You know they don't have any decent statistics on the actual family makeup and background of the children that are in jail.
Well, that's one of the. I mean, that's one of the
It's
biggest.
insane.
Gary, it's one of the biggest problems we have is that there's data out there on some of this stuff, but we don't do a good job as a state of measuring a lot of these things. You know, one of the questions I asked when I went to the Juvenile Justice Department was, I said, "What's our recidivism rate? You know, how many kids go in, we're rehabilitating them, they leave and come back?" And no one had the answer to it. We weren't even measuring that. And I'm saying, so we're a $30 million state agency, but we're not measuring the results of the programs that we're funding. And to me, we should be doing that across all departments. We should want to know what the return on investment is of the programs that we're funding in state government. And plus, this makes for good budgeting as well. When we're looking to do the budgets every 2 years, if you had measurements and statistics, you could say, okay, well, this program over here seems to be working pretty well because it's serving X number of people. This is how they're being served, and this is how effective it is, versus another program that maybe isn't working so well. But going back to, having a plan, I'm the first candidate that has rolled out a specific plan for how we're going to get good jobs to New Hampshire and create economic development. It's called New Hampshire's Future is Now. And the first part of this plan deals with our corporate tax rate, because we're non-competitive when it comes to businesses looking at what our corporate tax rate and whether or not they're going to expand here, move into the state, or whatever. We got one of the highest corporate tax rates in the country between our business profits tax and the business enterprise tax. We tax businesses right now that don't even make a profit in the state through the business enterprise tax.
I was surprised to learn that recently too, because
Yeah.
you always hear about the New Hampshire advantage, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize it
Yeah,
was
well-
on this show that I learned that how high our taxes are for corporations.
When
Yeah.
it comes to business taxes, we have no advantage. I mean, Massachusetts is more advantageous to do business in right now than New Hampshire is.
That's
which
amazing.
It is amazing. Well, and all you have to do is look at our workforce. I mean, we're 49th in the country per capita on the amount of people that commute out of state every day to go to work. And they're all going to Massachusetts. You know, stand on the borders
Wow.
of 93, 95 Route 3, and you can see all the New Hampshire plates that go into Mass, and they're paying, of course, Mass income tax
Right.
from working there. By the way, any idea? So we're 49th. Any idea what the only other state that has more commuters out of state? Gary?
Delaware.
Close. No, but close.
Rhode Island?
Maryland.
Oh, Maryland.
And they're all going to our favorite place, Washington, D.C.
Okay.
But, you know, our folks are going to Massachusetts. And so a part of this reason is because that's where all the high-paying jobs are right now. And so I've come up with a plan to aggressively start lowering our corporate tax rate. The business profits tax of proposed reducing it from its current rate of 8.5% to 5% by the year 2020. Same thing with the BET, lowering that from its current 0.75 to 0.25% by the year 2020. That's a tax on payroll. And so that's, you know, that hurts any business. Like, as I said, businesses that don't make money are still paying that tax. And that's why I've also come up with a plan to completely exempt businesses that are doing less than $500,000 in revenue, gross revenue, but make no profit for the year. They would not have to pay that business enterprise tax. Because if you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about starting a business here in the state, and you're looking at all of the risk factors that go into whether or not you're going to do that, and you're looking at it and saying, okay, maybe I'm not going to make any money until year 3. Oh, but I'm getting taxed by the state in those first 3 years regardless. That just is a disincentive to not create a business here in this state.
Right.
So we really got to get a hold on that corporate tax structure. Now the other part
Now,
of
would that be a tax break for anybody starting a business in New Hampshire?
It would
or
be-
just an upstart business in New Hampshire?
any business, well, every business would see the tax breaks, but any business, as I said, that's doing less than $500,000 in gross revenue
Okay.
and doesn't make a profit would get that, whether it's startup or not, would get that exemption from having to pay the BET. Now, the other part of the plan that I put out, that I propose as part of this, has to do with streamlining state government. Because, of course, the first question I'm going to get is, well, Kevin, where are you going to make up for that initial loss of revenue? And really, if you started implementing this plan in the first year, you're only talking about $6 million. It's about 3% of the state budget. But you're talking $6 million, and so what I've proposed on the other side with streamlining state government is doing a bunch of things that I talked about, implementing a system of metrics to measure, find where the inefficiencies are in state government so you can start making cuts there. And also implementing a large portion of there was an efficiency committee that studied a lot of how places where you can find cost savings in state government back in 2003. And nearly none of the recommendations have ever been implemented.
Really?
And it was a great study, and it found that in the first year alone you could save over $7 million if you implemented about 80% of the recommendations. In 5 years it was $420 million, and that was in 2003 dollars, so you know that'd be even more today. So I'd say, I'd roll that plan back out.
Who did that study?
It was a commission that was set up by the legislature. And they're all different things. For instance, consolidating certain state agencies. For me, there's no reason why we couldn't combine the banking, securities, and insurance departments, make them into one, financial services department, and reduce a lot of the redundancies there. So you can find cost savings in those first few years when the revenue, comes down from lowering the corporate tax rate. But here's the thing. I mean, you look at other models where this has been done. For instance, New York City, Rudy Giuliani, when he became mayor there, he went in, they had high corporate tax rates in New York City. He came in and slashed a lot of them, and everyone said the same thing, we're going to make up for the revenue. Well, guess what? As he cut the business tax rate, businesses flocked into the city. He got very aggressive about recruiting them in there, and revenues went up. So the rate went down, but overall revenues went up because the economic base ended up expanding. And that's what would happen here in New Hampshire. More businesses would be enticed to grow. They would hire more jobs because they're not paying as much in taxes. And I could go into Massachusetts. You know, I've said that as governor of New Hampshire, I'll be Deval Patrick's worst nightmare, because I will aggressively pursue businesses from Massachusetts to move, you know, a part of their operations or their whole operations up to New Hampshire, because we're going to make it very attractive for them to do that.
Now, one of the disadvantages you have, and I believe it's again because of Article 10 of the New Hampshire Constitution, where government can't be used to help one group or business or anything else. Some governors around the country can go to Company A,
Yeah.
or is it Company B? It's Company B, isn't it?
I think it's Company B, and
Company
then
B, yeah.
sometimes it depends on the state.
Yeah. And they can go to the company and say, you know, if you move up here,
Right.
we'll give you this tax break and we'll give you this land and
Sure.
and all these wonderful benefits if they relocate. But as governor, you don't quite have that. You can't offer a company one specific deal, quote unquote.
No, you can't. And so we're a little bit more restricted in that area, but it doesn't mean you can't come up with other incentives. For instance, I was up in the North Country last week. I spent a whole day up in Berlin. We did the tour of the paper mill, the hospital up there, did some Main Street visits. I mean, that's an area where I really think could be on the precipice of having a rebirth up there. The paper mill's back up and running. They're adding jobs to it by the week. They're going to have over 200 jobs there by this summer. And you can almost feel the people are starting to, you know, feel like that area, that region can come back. But there's two problems. There's two hurdles right now that we have in terms of getting it to the next level. One is infrastructure. You know, we have to make it a priority to make infrastructure improvements along there, up in that area, so that people can move around easier. You know, that's a hindrance to more businesses moving in there. But there's no reason we couldn't offer tax incentives for companies to move to the North Country. Make it a geographic tax incentive, that if you move a company up here, we can give you maybe a tax break on either the business profits tax or the business enterprise tax. And that isn't favoring one company over another. It's just saying, you know, depending on where you move your business, you know,
So
we can give you
almost have tax-free zones, so to
Sure.
speak, to help some of the more desolate areas of the state.
Sure. Yeah. And you know, when you build, there's all different areas of the state where you can build these, you know, economic engines and really start spurring economic development. And I think Berlin for that area is a perfect region. You know, there's great stuff happening in the Upper Valley area outside of Dartmouth. You know, Dartmouth, we got great students coming out of Dartmouth right now, and they're not staying here. They leave. And that's a big problem, is that we're not keeping our young people here. We have to do a better job at retaining our young folks in this state, because otherwise, and they're leaving because the jobs aren't here.
Right.
You know, and it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. We need the jobs to keep the young people here, but the young people aren't going to, you know,
Stay here unless
there's jobs.
Go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line? Hello? Please turn down your...
Hey, I have one more question for the honorable gentleman.
Yes.
My question to him is, how about taxing a lot of these non-profit organizations, such as the hospitals, that Catholic diocese, you got like all these non-profits. We have so many properties that are being bought up by the non-profits, so the state is actually losing a lot of money. How about putting some kind of like a surtax or something like this on them and your non-profits? Would that be economically advisable?
Are you Satan? Norm?
Yeah. This is a jerk. I'll get you, Gary.
I know you will. Payback. All right, thanks, Norm.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, you know, I mean, look, they're nonprofits, and by federal law, you can't tax nonprofit organizations. And I don't think it would be wise to start taxing nonprofits either. I mean, look, nonprofits do a lot of good work that the government doesn't do. The thing I would actually like to see, though, is of these nonprofits, how much of their funding is actually in state and federal funds, because that is one area I get very concerned about. Part of the thing that makes nonprofits, to me, so successful is that they learn how to operate on a limited budget through private funding, through running their operation, their business very well. And when you start getting addicted to any kind of state funds or federal funds, to me, if your funding is if 50% or more of your funding is coming from the government, be it state or federal, at what point are you no longer a nonprofit and you're suddenly a quasi-state agency? And so that's one of the things that would concern me about the funding. But in terms of taxation, I don't think we should start taxing nonprofits in our state.
No.
It wouldn't be very politically popular,
No.
I wouldn't think.
Probably not.
No, that wouldn't be a platform issue that you would want to run on, probably.
Not one I plan to run on.
No.
So the thing is that to me, we need a governor who's going to have a long-range vision for this state. And granted, it's a 2-year term, and we budget every 2 years, but you still have to be thinking long-term. And I'd like to, I think I have cast a long-term vision for where we ought to be as a state in the next 10 years. Even if I'm only elected for 2 or 4 years, we're all in this together, and we should all be in it together in terms of creating more jobs and creating more economic growth in the state. But also having a specific plan for how you're going to get there. Because as I said before, there's candidates out there that are going to talk a good game and say, oh, we need more jobs, we need, more kids to be going to school. But people want substance, and they want to know, how are you going to do it? Because people are tired of politicians making promises and then not being able to carry them out. And that's where I feel that not only am I talking ideas and specifics, but I've got a track record, and I've got experience of getting good results in state government. As I've said, there's not too many people I think that could talk about instituting metrics in state government that have actually done it, and that's something that I have done.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because today, I'm not going to be able to find this quick enough, but we did a bill to, and I think it was in the paper, like this weekend or the other day, was to actually start getting auditing. There's a new way of auditing, and maybe you probably know more about it than I do, of the Health and Human Services, because it was found through something like a certain percentage of people that were on the getting welfare and food stamps that weren't even in the state.
No, this is Gary. This is a serious issue, and I put out a press release on this issue today. That there was an independent study that was done, that was given to HHS, that found out that there could be anywhere from $20 to $40 million in fraud right now.
Wow.
Of recipients for food stamps or Medicaid that are from out of state, living out of state, or they actually don't meet the eligibility requirements because they have extra income somewhere, or they're not even, in some cases, living.
I think one case was something like there was somebody that was actually getting food stamp that had a property worth $400,000 or something like that, or
Wow.
Yeah, so you're going to see this is going to make big news, but this is the kind of stuff where, we have to look at all of this, and to just assume, well, there's no fraud in the system is really putting your head in the sand. Because here's the thing, we want to give the money to the people that most need it.
Right.
We're always saying, geez, we're strapped for cash and we don't have enough money to be giving it to the most needy, in our state. Well, guess what? If we have $20 to $40 million in fraud, well, that's $20, $40 million that aren't going to people that actually need these programs.
Right.
And so this isn't about taking people off the rolls. What it's about is making sure that we're cutting down on the people who are fraudulently getting on the rolls and giving it to the folks
How much do you know? There's cases at which, I'm sure there are cases of people getting food stamps that are fraudulent, but they might not know it. You know what I mean? In other words, I didn't know I was supposed to be getting this. I have 2 kids and, whatever. But the cases where it's obvious that it was deliberate fraud, how much does the state actually, or any state for that matter, pursue that to the point of actually jail time?
I don't know the answer to
because
that, Gary.
That's real important. It's, if somebody's going to go and try to play the system, and they know that the worst possible thing is they're going to lose their benefits.
No, right.
Why not?
Well, no, I mean, and like you said, you got to make sure that you're not going after folks whom legitimately didn't know that maybe they were getting, assistance where they weren't eligible to do it.
Correct.
But for the people you're talking about that are purposely being fraudulent about what they're doing, I mean, there needs to be a penalty because otherwise, how are you going to prevent more people
Right.
from doing that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall ever hearing anybody going to jail for milking the system,
That's true. Yeah, you really don't hear about that happening.
because I haven't been caught yet.
Right.
Right. Jeez, I said it again.
We'll edit this for the replay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Glad this isn't going out. There's a 3-second delay. I hope you caught that, right?
Oh, he
Yes,
did. He's good. He
yes,
knows
yes.
by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he knows. He knows what to do.
Gary, you have much too fun on this show.
I know. So I've started my own business, Kevin. I'm kind of an entrepreneur myself. And there's a lot of people that go around worrying, right? You know them. Everybody knows them.
Oh, yeah.
They spend, I don't know, hours and hours a day worrying, right?
Yeah.
This is my new business plan. You send me a check for $10 and the list, and I'll worry about it for you.
Really?
Right? So you just send me the list, whether or not Bobby's going to get into the college or
Right.
whatever the hell it is, and I'll spend my time worrying about Bobby getting into college
Wow.
so that you don't have to.
$10? Hell, that's a bargain at twice the price.
It just the health benefit alone
Yes.
is worth that $10.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's my new business.
Gary, I can see why you're getting reelected year after year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Blarney. Anyway, so back to what other plans do you have for our fair state?
well, as I talked about electric rates, we
yeah,
need
okay.
a long-term plan to bring electric rates down in our state. Part of that, we're not allowing the public utilities right now to purchase electricity at the cheapest rate possible.
Why?
Well, because
I don't know.
as a state,
we did a PUC bill today.
right,
I think
the
that was-
divestiture bill,
Yeah, I think that was tabled.
right, it was tabled.
Tabled. Okay. Yeah.
But
He's not even in the legislature, and he pays attention better than I do.
I know, right? He'd probably make a good
He'd
governor.
probably be worth $200 a year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
hey,
so-
but no, we right now we're subsidizing certain forms of energy because the legislature and the state has mandated the public utilities that a portion of their energy generation has to come from certain alternative areas, alternative energies. And the thing is that, I'm all for diversifying where our energy comes from, but not if we're going to be subsidizing it as a state. Because ultimately, who pays for that? It's the ratepayers that pay for that subsidy.
Right.
And so,
I was kind of on the fence today about that because I'm thinking, all right, like right now, the cheapest way to generate electricity is natural gas. Mm-hmm. And you've got one generating plant that's using biofuels, one that's hydro, and one that's, I don't know, using guppies. I don't know what they use. So
chicken livers.
chicken livers, exactly. And it just seems logical to put some of those on hold or pay enough to keep them so you can use them. But I don't know. It just seems like if all of a sudden the price of natural gas goes through the roof, you have no backup plan.
Yeah.
Well, the state went forward with deregulation, back in the early 2000s, and in fact, we put the stops on it when we saw what was going on in California and some of the other states that were going through dereg, where it was not working out the way they thought it was going to work out. And in fact, if you look at the charts between states that went through deregulation and those that didn't, energy prices have stayed lower for the states that it was one of those rare areas.
Would simplify that for the criminally Irish in me.
Sure. So basically,
so deregulation meant what?
is divesting the generation of energy from the delivering of energy. Right now, PSNH is a very unique situation in that it's the only public utility in the state that both generates some of its energy and delivers its energy as well.
So divesting means the state taking their stake
out of generation.
Out of
Right. So the generation plants would be owned by other private companies,
Okay.
and PSNH would only be responsible for delivering that energy. And what that was supposed to do, in theory, was open up, the free markets and make there be more competition, bringing down the rates. But in fact, that didn't happen in the states that went forward with doing that. And so consequently, over time, what you see is the states that never went through with dereg, their rates stayed lower over time than those states that did go forward with it. And New Hampshire saw this happening. As I said, there was the whole Enron stuff that was going on out in California. New Hampshire saw all this happening, and they put the halt on it before they sold off all of the assets, all of PSNH's assets.
Right, right.
And so now, what PSNH is able to do for the customers when they're looking at, purchasing energy, is that they can use the market and say, okay, if it's cheaper to purchase the energy from their own generation, they'll do that, and then they'll sell that to the customer. But if it's cheaper to purchase it from then they won't generate the energy, and they'll purchase it from the market instead. And that's kind of a unique thing that PSNH is able to do right now. So I actually, I'm glad that the legislature tabled that particular bill, because I don't think it would be wise to divest all of, for instance, the Seabrook nuclear power plant. Many people don't know it's owned by a Florida company.
Really?
Seabrook is owned by Florida Power and Light.
No kidding.
Yeah, and because of when we
I
made
thought
them,
we spent $1 zillion.
we didn't. And then we made them sell it off. We made PSNH sell it off. But if you talk to most people today, they'll tell you that was a terrible mistake, that we never should have sold off Seabrook.
Oh, you know what's interesting? I got a couple of the state reps I sit next to are from Seabrook, and they said Seabrook is completely different than the power plant in Japan. Because what happens is, and the one in Seabrook is either below sea level or something like that, where if the crap hit the fan, they could just flood it instantly.
Interesting.
So
That
it's they're not even close to the same type of
That's-
threat to the environment as that plant in Japan is.
That's good.
Well, hopefully we don't have to worry about any
no, but-
earthquakes or volcanoes or tsunamis
Yeah.
coming on shore anytime soon here in New Hampshire.
But I know, but still, it's something.
No, that's interesting too.
I didn't know it was owned by.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how much I pay attention.
I had no idea either. Yeah.
So, but the thing is that you've got these regulations that we've put on the public utilities over the years, which are, and here's another example of the EPA recently mandated to PSNH. They want them to build this cooling system for one of their generators because there's water that goes into the Merrimack, but they base the mandate, the environmental mandate, on data that's 40 years old. Well, the Merrimack River 40 years ago is dramatically different than how the Merrimack River is today. It's a lot cleaner today. But nonetheless, you get some bureaucrat in Washington that's just checking off boxes, and they're saying, here you go, New Hampshire, you got to build this cooling system now. $112 million. Now, if that's allowed to go through and the state doesn't push back on that and say, no, you base your data on base your studies on current data and not stuff from 40 years ago.
Right.
Who pays for that? We all are. We're all going to pay for that $112 million mandate.
Right.
So we need to, one, ease up on some of these onerous regulations and stop subsidizing a lot of these alternative forms of energy, in my opinion. And then number two, push back harder against Washington and say, no, if you're going to put out these mandates, come up here and really check out what's going on in New Hampshire.
Now, how much does some of the viewers might not know is that a governor in New Hampshire is far more hamstrung than any other governor, as far as I know, in the country, in that when you become governor, to make a contract, to appoint a judge, you need the agreement of 5 executive councilmen.
Right.
And it was still done deliberately because that's how little we trusted governors
Right.
at the beginning. At the beginning of the New Hampshire, when we formed New Hampshire.
Right.
So, like you said, I totally agree. We really need somebody in that corner office that can probably more tactfully than I would do it, but tell Washington D.C. to go pound sand. How effective can you be as governor doing that, or do you need
Well, you can be very. I mean, you got to know where you can do stuff and where your limitations are as governor of New Hampshire. It's the second weakest, by design, the second weakest governorship in the country. Believe it or not, the weakest one is Texas.
Yeah, I heard Texas was pretty bad.
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
But New Hampshire's the second, and so yeah, you're very limited in some areas, but in other areas you're not. I'll give you a perfect example. We had been doing the way we were billing Medicaid in this state for a long time. The federal government finally said it's not, the way you guys are doing is not right, and you're going to owe us a lot of money. And Governor Benson was the governor at the time. He flew down to Washington to see then the Secretary of HHS, Tommy Thompson. And they basically had it out in a room for about 3 hours, and Benson wasn't leaving there until there was an agreement that the state wouldn't owe all this back money to the feds, but that going forward, if they produced a plan within a couple of months that showed how they were going to bill going forward, that basically all would be forgotten. They shook on it. They said, that's the agreement. Fine. So he went down, got it done down there. Well, enter the Obama administration and enter a new governor.
Right.
They've now gone back and told New Hampshire, well, no, you owe all of these Medicaid back payments to the tune of something like $50 million. And this was a big thing that came out, it was probably 3 months ago, because at the time the question was, well, is New Hampshire going to owe it? What's Governor Lynch going to do? What's the legislature going to do? Governor Benson actually called Governor Lynch and said, he would be willing to sign an affidavit and say this was an agreement we had with the federal government that we weren't going to have to owe this money. But instead, Governor Lynch settled with the federal government for us to now owe this money back in payments. Why? Because he didn't stand up to the federal government, Gary. That's the reason why. And so consequently now we owe a certain payment. It's like $17 million this year, and then whoever the next governor is, certainly if it's me, now I'm going to be straddled with that over the 2 years after because of the agreement that the governor made with the current administration. So you have to be aggressive about this stuff, and you have to be willing to get Washington on the phone and say, no, we're not going to do this, and we'll work with you, but we're not just going to lay down with you and take all of these mandates out of Washington and let you tell us how we're going to run our business up here in New Hampshire.
And if they're going to lay down with them, they should at least buy a dinner and a movie for
You would think. One
Yeah,
would think.
That would be fair.
It's good manners.
It is. It's just polite.
It is.
No, I've had that issue with the federal government. I was blown away freshman year.
Yeah.
I was working full time and I was a legislator, so the speaker, Gene Chandler, put me on Fish and Game because there's not that many
Right.
bills to go through.
Yeah.
And there was a bill to require on your hunting or fishing license your social security number. And I'm sitting there in the committee. I'm a kind of a privacy issue guy, not as much as my counterpart from Ware, but I said, this is insane. Why do we got to do it? Well, the Fish and Game Department says, well, we have to do it. Why do we have to do it? Well, because if we don't do it, the federal government will withhold revenue to the Fish and Game Department if you don't allow that, if you don't put that on there.
Yeah.
And here I am working 40 hours a week, paying taxes to a government in Washington, D.C. that's taking that money to blackmail my state to do something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it was an eye opener.
Yeah.
And as you know, having been up there and know what's going on, that's rampant. They do that all the time.
It is rampant. And another example of that is No Child Left Behind.
Yeah.
I mean, the shame of this is that there's bipartisan agreement that No Child Left Behind is not working for our school districts. Democrats want to see it gone. Republicans want to see it gone. You know the reason it's not gone
Money.
yet? The money. Yeah. Because as soon as you say, okay, we're going to get ourselves out of No Child Left Behind, I think the number is something like $40 or $50 million that the state's going to lose, and then everyone squawks at it. So even though everyone agrees that it's not helping our schools, and in fact it's handcuffing them and potentially bringing down scores, we're saying we're not willing to get out of it because
It's also a Ponzi scheme.
now they've got the...
It's a Ponzi scheme because No Child Left Behind says that if you don't make an improvement over a certain period of time, you're a failing school.
Right.
That's simple math. You cannot keep improving.
Right. At some
It's
point,
not
you
possible.
hit a limit.
You
Right,
have a
yeah.
limit,
Right.
a threshold where you cannot.
Right.
We've got some schools, I forget which ones, that are actually really good schools, have
Yeah.
very good results,
Right.
and they're a failing school now.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is again,
It's
why are we allowing Washington to dictate our standards in New Hampshire? We ought to have our own New Hampshire specific, New Hampshire centric standards.
Yeah.
You know, to how we want to measure our students, not how Washington wants to measure our students.
Yeah, I don't have any problem at all with a federal government that set up standards so that New Hampshire could basically weigh itself against other states to get an idea of, oh, this state's doing this is working.
Yeah.
So informational.
Right.
Requirement, no. But you know, one of the things that people don't even, when they talk about education, the one thing they don't even put into the equation is, if you look at Washington D.C., they spend $30,000 per student in Washington D.C. $30,000. You should be able to pay a kid for a personal tutor to take him out in the park and teach him stuff, okay, for $30,000. The problem
Yeah.
with Washington, D.C. is you have 75% of the kids being brought up in broken homes. Most of the boys are brought up without a father or male role model in the home, and you wonder why it costs $30,000 to educate them. It's got nothing to do with poverty, racism, or anything else. It is the fundamental breakdown of the family. Some kids are living in such situations that they're not educatable. Your turn.
Well, no, I mean, you know, just expounding off that point, I mean, teachers today, you know, are when they're, and it doesn't matter where it is, whether it's Washington, D.C. or New Hampshire, I mean, kids come into the class. I worked in a public school setting for a year. My wife is a special ed teacher, though she's been at home with.
Where's she teaching?
Londonderry is where she was teaching. She's been
Okay.
at home with our kids, you know, since we've had them, but they're going off to school now too, so she'll probably go back. But a lot of these kids, you know, come into school today with baggage that they're bringing in from their homes, and so teachers are having to deal with so many more issues today than they were dealing with 20 or 30 years ago. And so, you know, it's not, I don't think you can look at the education system right now and point to any one thing and say, that's the problem. But it's a whole multitude of areas that need improvement. You know, we need more parental involvement in the schools. We need the students, you know, to cooperate. Everyone needs to cooperate if we're going to get this done right and do it well. There needs to be more flexibility, I think, in the curriculum. That I know when I worked in the public school setting, there were teachers that would say to me, geez, Kevin, I would love to spend more time in this area in math or this area in language arts, but I'm mandated to get through so much in the curriculum on all of these subjects, I have to move on.
Yeah, my wife's a special ed teacher in Manchester. I think she said she spends basically 1 day a week just doing paperwork.
Wow.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe, yeah, because, well, and that goes too with the federal mandates. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there is, and that same thing occurs. I saw it at the juvenile justice system. As you had, we don't call them caseworkers there, but probation officers that are working with juveniles that go into it because they want to help juvenile delinquents.
Yeah.
And then I would hear, Kevin, you know what I spend 50% of my time doing? Paperwork.
Right.
You know, and
all
just doing paperwork.
Instead of, yeah. And then
But they want to be out, but you know, but then they have to make sure they fill the proper paperwork out because guess what? There's federal funding that they get for, you know, dotting so many I's, crossing so many T's.
It's 5 of, by the way.
5 up.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to wrap it up. But anyway, if you get elected, it would be really cool if somebody spent some serious time taking every federal dollar we get and find out how much that actually cost us. I bet you.
Well, I've said that,
lot
Gary.
of them-
That is one area where I have said that I would do one of the first things I would do is look at all of the federal monies we're getting in every department, and I'd want to know what is the cost for compliance on the state and local levels.
Right.
Are we expending more and trying to comply with these mandates than we're actually getting
Because
in the money?
Typically what happens is they'll say, we'll give you, $50,000 to open up this position
Yeah.
as, chief bottle washer. Okay, and so you open up this position, you pay somebody $50,000 for bottle washer, and then 2 years after a different Congress comes in and they say, well, we probably could take $20,000 out of this program, $10,000. So now you're on the hook for $20,000 and you never needed a bottle washer. and
It's our government at work.
yeah, and that's a lot of what happened. But anyway, Kevin,
Thank you.
Honorable.
Well,
Kevin
in
Smith.
some circles.
Technically, I'm saying on paper, you're
On paper, yeah.
Yeah.
If people want to find out more about my campaign, they can go to kevinsmithforgovernor.com.
Yep.
Again, kevinsmithforgovernor.com, and they can go there, sign up for my emails. They can make $5,000 donations. It's all.
That's it. That's the limit, though.
That's
Only
the limit.
five?
Only five.
Only five,
Yes, but
okay.
you and your wife could each give 5, Gary. So.
I doubt it.
But
Thank
the
you.
But the option is there.
There are options here.
Yes.
The money's not,
Right.
but the option is. But I just wanted for the audience to know that I have invited both of the Democratic candidates. I have called them. One of them I talked to on Facebook at an event last week or the week before. I went and personally invited them onto the show, and have heard nothing back. So I've had you at Ovid LaMontagne about a month ago. And you're welcome back when we get closer to the election. I hope you come back.
Yeah.
Will do.
And like I said, that invitation's out there. Why they don't take it, I don't know. I guess because I'm out of my mind. Thank you very much.
Gary, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Good night, folks. See you next
Bye,
week.
everybody.